Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West, and we have, as always, another phenomenal guest. And I could talk for at least 30 minutes about this guy's phenomenal career, but I'll just give a couple of the highlights. This guy is a best-selling, number one best-selling author, and he's got one book out there that if you haven't got, you should get it. And I'll have the link directly to get that book on Amazon below. But he was also going to talk about a new book that's about to hit the streets, and you're going to definitely want to hear about this. But he's got so much we could talk about. This guy has done so much in the industry. But I'm going to just quickly turn it over to him for him to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Ted Harrington.
Yeah, hey Jim, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, I come from the world of ethical hacking. So I'm in the fortunate position that I get to run a company of hackers. And every day that's what we get to do. Companies hire us to hack them and help them build better, more secure systems. And it's remarkably and profoundly fulfilling. And that is what led to some of the things that you mentioned. Like I wrote Hackable to sort of maybe expose, I don't know if expose is the right word, but to shine a spotlight onto the things that we've seen companies get right and what they get wrong when it comes to, building better, more secure systems. And that led to a TED talk that I gave called Why You Need to Think Like a Hacker. And then that led to this second book that I'm working on called Inner Hacker, which is all about the hacker mindset and how we can apply it to anything.
Is that the cover that I see on the shelf behind you, Inner Hacker? I can see a
It
little bit
is,
in the
yeah.
background.
It's funny how it's blown up, obviously, to like way
Yeah.
larger than book size. Because over last summer at DEF CON, we did this big event. It was really, really, really cool. I'm so glad we got to do this. That was the reveal of the cover and the title. So, like got up in front of an entire room full of hackers and talked about sort of the origin, how did we get to this book or whatever. And then I did the dramatic, like had, this thing on an easel with a black whatever and just to like pull it back. And then as a result, had this foam core, whatever that size is, maybe 18 by 24 or something, image of the cover. And it was pretty fun because then we are just like walking around Las Vegas with this ridiculous book cover and did a photo shoot with it at all these different places. And then I brought it home and was like, this needs to go on my shelf. So
Yes.
it's behind me right now.
Well, I'm also an author as well, and I can tell you every book is like a baby when you first hold it in your hands. And whether it's foam board or not, it's an achievement because so many people have the idea. I talk, a lot of folks say, "Oh, you're an author." Oh, I had an idea to write a book. Lots of people have the idea, but to take the idea and do all of the work, people don't understand there's a tremendous amount of work that goes from the idea to the reality of having it. And then, of course, there's the never-ending marketing. But I love that you got these books out there. We're going to have the links below, so look, anyone watching this right now, don't worry about the Google search. We're going to save you a couple clicks. But we want to just quickly deep dive into what it means to be an ethical hacker. Because a lot of folks, we hear the term, and when people hear the term hacker, and I just had a conversation with another guest on a podcast where, she just hates the images of, dark. You can't see the faces, the hoodie and the keyboard. And even though that could represent a part of the community, but that's the image most people think. People in hoodies, hunched over
Yeah.
keyboards. But that's not always the case. It could be people working in an office environment and doing the work of auditing, pen testing, and doing what they can to get into a network like you do. So can you take us into, start with a high level description and kind of take us through what that looks like?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And maybe we even zoom out one level further to ask the question, what is a hacker? Because you were asking about what an ethical hacker is, and that's one type of hacker. But um, it's really fascinating to me that the term hacker has come to mean cyber criminal. You
Yeah.
see that in news stories, you see that even in the marketing of security companies. And unfortunately, that's misrepresentative because a hacker isn't necessarily bad, nor is a hacker necessarily good. A hacker is a curious, non-conforming, committed, creative problem solver. And then it's the application of that mindset that makes them good or bad. Do they use those
Good.
those skills in order to exploit a system, or do they use it to improve a system? And those who seek to improve the system, that's the world that I come from, are ethical. That's what ethical hackers are. And that's the kind of people that I get to be around every day. And the ones who want to exploit a system to obtain some sort of gain, to deliver some sort of harm, those are attackers. Now, they're both hackers, and it's not technically wrong. It's not technically incorrect when the headline news says, like, hackers breached such and such company. That's not technically wrong. But the problem is it's really being used in this negative way when it's like saying, I don't know. I'm struggling to think of like what's a equivalent, but maybe you say like a plumber, right? It's like if someone were to say that a plumber, because they're a plumber, they are unethical or they do illegal things. It's like, what? No, a plumber does this job. What are you talking about? Bad plumbers are
Mhm.
unethical.
Yeah.
Maybe mechanic is better to think about, or like used car salesman. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I was on a car sales lot the other day, and like the stuff that these people would attempt, these tactics, it's like you are an unethical one. But there are definitely ethical ones out here. But just because you sell a car doesn't necessarily make you good or bad.
Yeah. And of course, referring to the car salesman, like adding on the clear coat package and all these other options and tagging on these extra fees that you have no clue what, that's unethical in and of itself. But back to the hacking point, I think it's fascinating that, businesses, they need hackers, and there's other
Mm.
terms that the businesses will use instead of the word hacker, because hacker does have that general, negative connotation to it. But a lot of folks, another term would be like pen testers, right? Auditors, a system analyst even, that probably be more of a reach. But I would say pen tester is an adjacent word for where a company that needs to really have an independent view because if you got your own IT team, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. Yeah, all our systems are secure. We follow the policies and we do all the things. But then at the end of the day, they don't really have a real, nuts to bolts assessment of really how do they stack up in the real world. So can you maybe take us through when a company does reach out to you, can you take us through, what that process is like when you engage your team and maybe at a high level talk about like what would be different members of the team? Because we usually see when you see the movies like Mission Impossible, it's always the one hacker guy that's
Yeah.
in the van that's doing all the fast keyboard strikes. But that's the Hollywood version of it. I mean, when it comes to the work that you and your company and your teams do, could you maybe give us a insight into what that's like?
Are you suggesting that Hollywood would portray something in a way that is not actually the lived experience?
With the
I'm gonna
exception
have
of
to
a
think
few
about
shows
that.
like maybe Mr. Robot in certain sequences, but that's another
Yeah.
story.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm joking. Well, first of all, I would maybe not necessarily 100% agree with the statement that internal teams don't exactly know what's going on with the security of their systems and that they always think that it's rosy and everything's perfect. I mean, I would say almost all of our customers are the opposite of that. They're like, we have a lot of understanding of what's happening, how our system works, but we don't necessarily know everything. And the big thing is that they don't necessarily have the right capabilities in house. Because when you think about what it takes to have someone who's an expert in reverse engineering and someone who's an expert in malware analysis, someone who's an expert in all these different things, to build a team to do that internally. I mean, even the largest companies in the world, very few of them have that. It's so expensive. You're not going to be using these people all the time. So it makes way more sense to pair your internal. You should have some internal security resources depending on the size of the company, and you should pair with outside experts who bring that expertise in certain domains. And so I think that's a really, really winning formula. And you don't need to use those people all the time. It's like someone who's, let's say you're building whatever, let's say like a payroll software. You're building this software. Do you need to have a team of ethical hackers in house all the time? I mean, no, you don't. And in fact, probably you shouldn't because having not only access to expertise just when you need it is a benefit to outsourcing it, but also there's this independence, which you touched on, which is this idea that it's like, uh, we're when we come in, we want to help our customers accomplish whatever their goal is, but we're going to tell them how it is, even if they don't necessarily like it. We're not going to be jerks about it, but
Yeah.
we're not going to be blinded by the politics or maybe what a CEO of the company, wants the message to be. We're going to say this is the message, and it happens all the time that there's like, well, here's why we think that's not as critical as you think that it is, and that's fine. Let's discuss that. But we're not just going to say we don't have the fear of like, well, because we're disagreeing with the CEO, like our job's going to be eliminated. I mean, maybe the CEO might never want to hire us again, but that's fine. There's ethics and integrity in what it is that we do, and so I think there's a lot of benefits. I write in Hackable a lot about the benefits of why you want both an external partner, someone who's your pen testing company, and you want to have in-house resources as well.
What is the balancing act? Because I know a lot of times when someone does an audit, an analysis, a pen test, and they provide these reports, I can only imagine that with certain customers, there's a lot of education and on the spot. I would literally call on the spot in the moment training in a way or education to kind of
Mm.
bridge the gap of where their knowledge may be at that moment to one, explaining the reports. Some reports are better than others, but to get them to make sure that they have bridged that gap of knowledge to be able to take what you leave behind and actually, take some real action behind it. Well, what is some of the challenges you might have experienced in the what I call the on the spot education?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And clearly, someone who has been in the trenches of this before is asking that. Because our job is not done until meaningful change is delivered. Uh, what would be the point of paying someone to come in and be like, "Here's all your problems," and they're like, "Cool, thanks."
Bye.
That's it. That's the end of it. It's like, well, hold on a second. No, it's I don't know. What would the metaphor be? It's like maybe you're
You just
studying
had
for
a
the
baby. The
SAT.
hospital sends you home and say, "There you go. There's your baby. Go."
Yeah, I guess that could be one for sure. And they're like, hope it doesn't die. And you're like, I'm not going to do anything with the advice that has been given to me on how to be a good parent. No, you're going to go and be like, okay, how do I be a better parent? How do I make sure this thing develops and grows and thrives? And that I'll have to think about that. That's a pretty good metaphor. And I have stories, tons of stories indeed, about where companies have resisted implementing the fixes. And it's for very real and practical reasons. It's not like someone sees these problems and is like, I just don't want to do that, although that certainly has happened. But it's more like, well, when am I going to have the time for that? How do I prioritize that versus something else? And one of the real problems with security testing today is that there's so much nonsense out there that's like, hey, we're going to run an automated scanner. We're going to call it a pen test. We're going to hand you this bloated output that has like hundreds of findings, many of which are false positives, many of which are duplicates of each other. And you're going to go do something with that. And it's like, you receive that and you're like, I can't do anything with this. I need someone to simplify this for me, prioritize it for me based on how my business actually operates. And that's really what is critically important. And you mentioned that some reports are better than others. And I think that's a really important observation and one that maybe a few years ago I would have thought of like, yeah, some reports are better than others. It's like just some of anything is better than some of any other thing. But I realized that in security testing, that is so critically important. Uh, we had a customer come to us recently, and they wanted to hire us for this service that we were like, I guess we could do that, but this is interesting. They literally wanted us to train them on how to decipher the reports they were getting from other security testing companies. And we were like, the first indication is the reports are pretty bad if you need to then pay someone else to tell you
Yeah,
what to do with
interpret
it.
them.
Yeah. So we were like, I don't even know. I think we were like, we're not going to charge you for that. No, let's just,
Good on
here's what it
you.
should be and go do that.
Yeah. A lot of companies are looking into one of the new hot buzzwords is obviously, threat intelligence, right? And this has been around for a good bit of time. And you got, so I recently had a guest on the podcast, John Baker from the Center of Threat Informed Defense with MITRE. And I've also had another guest with Attack IQ, which does a lot of training for the MITRE attack framework. How important are these things like the cyber kill chain, the MITRE attack framework? Is this something that you and your teams would utilize in anything that you work, or is that within the I guess the ecosphere of some of the stuff that you work with?
Yeah. So I think maybe without getting too specific about any individual framework, the better way to answer that question is thinking about intelligence. Like, how can we gather information? How do we use that information? And and then what's the best way for that information to be shared? So I love using castles as a metaphor, right? Everyone can conceptualize castles. We've probably all been in a castle at some point in our lives. And when we think about information, the way that a lot of companies want to think about how do they share information with their testers is they think about it like this. The king, he's in his castle. He wants to understand, can his enemies come and kill him in the castle? So what does he do? He sends a carrier pigeon off to some of his loyal nobles and says, send me some of your knights. And let's see if they can get in. So in a sense, that's kind of what security testing is like. Someone's like, I got this thing I want to protect. Can you come see how vulnerable it is? That's a good thing. But the flaw that a lot of organizations make is they're like, the knights arrive, the moat is up, and the king's inside. And they're like, see if you can get in. It's like, all right, so now what do they do? So now the knight is like, all right, well, I guess I'll start counting the alligators in this moat. But that's such a waste because the king already knows how many alligators are in the moat. So the best case scenario is that the knights counted correctly, but they wasted time doing it. The king could have just been like, there's 8 alligators. Okay, now I know how many alligators there are. I see 8 of them, so I can swim across safely right now. It's like, it's a dumb example, but it shows why information is really important and really powerful. So when we think about all these different frameworks that give us guides and ways to think about how can we find intelligence, how can we use intelligence, what is open source, what is publicly available versus what is more closed source and proprietary or private, we have to realize that information is an advantage, and defenders and attackers are both trying to consume that advantage. Mm-hmm. And we have to be sharing information as much as we can. So whether that's between a company hiring another company that they're asking to do this type of service, getting involved with information, with ISACs and things of that nature, with publishing research, information is incredibly powerful. And it's something that I think we sort of are cutting ourselves off at the legs sometimes by trying to withhold information when we should be doing the opposite.
And I totally agree. I mean, the concept of the whole black box to gray box to white box testing, obviously white box testing, if you are really wanting to see the security of your network, you give as much information to include even a regular user account on the
Yeah.
inside of your network and let the auditors and the hackers do what they do best is really what you want to do. And that we could also talk for days about the inside view of your network versus the outside view and so forth. And again, all of it has valid points to really test the security of your operations and your network. I know we could talk all day about ethical hacking, but I do want to respect your time. I wanted to talk a little bit about your 2 books, the one that's about to come out. But let's first start with the book Hackable.
Mm-hmm.
What's the why? What is the why of why you wrote this book?
Yes, I love that question. So here's the moment that led to when I was like, I have to write a book. So this, of course, starts with I've kind of wanted to write a book much of my life. Like, it's just a hard thing to do. A lot of people say they want to do it, but don't actually start. And then other people who start, only a small percentage of them actually finish. And that to me, I just inherently, I'm drawn to the challenge. I think that's why I'm drawn to the hacking world, why I want to be part of it, because people love the challenge in this world. And so I kind of inherently had that to begin with. But the moment that made it so it's like, all right, we got to do this was, so as I mentioned, I run this company of hackers. And so we work with companies and we hack stuff for them. And over the years of doing it, combined with not just hands-on experience with our customers, but then also like meeting people at conferences. I do a lot of keynote speaking and stuff like that. So I meet people both that are customers and out in the community. And I started realizing that it seems like everyone has the same problems. Now, they might not all use the same words to describe their problems, but I could sort of organize them into these common problems when it comes to how do they secure their tech. And once I realized that, I thought that was really interesting. Like, oh, fascinating. No matter maturity of the company, geographic location, level of funding, what industry segment they're in, whatever, kind of all have the same problem. So then I started thinking about, well, what are the solutions to those problems? And that was the lightning bolt from on high that was like,
Love
you
it.
have to do this, was I realized that the conventional solutions to the problems that everyone has were wrong. Like, literally the way people talk about solving it. We already talked about some of them on this discussion already, like information sharing. Like, so many people are like, we got to do black box. Don't share information. We want to emulate real world attack conditions. And it's like, that is so incredibly wrong the way you're thinking about it. And so I sat down to address these common misconceptions. And that's what Hackable became. Each chapter addresses a common misconception I see, says, here's the misconception, here's the flaws with it, here's what to do instead, here's how to apply it. So it's really written for people who are close to the security of a system. So whether that's like CTOs or software developers even security professionals, but people who can materially impact the security of a system. I wrote this for those people so they could do it better.
Well, Ted, thank you for writing that book because I mean, what a gift you've given industry to have those insights and that experience poured into a book where, you know what, some people aren't ready to, get that big quote and price tag to have a team come in yet. But you know what, if they could at least start with the book and start to learn what they don't know and try and change their perspective to what the right perspective is. So thank you so much for writing such a book. And of course, it's a number one bestseller as well. So folks, if you haven't got it yet, the link is in the description below. Get a copy of the book. But now we have a new book about to hit the market soon. So can you tell us about this? I'm super excited to hear about it.
Sure, yeah. So Hackable, it did great when it came out. The just hit number one bestseller, and that while that's meaningful, the thing that really got me excited was when people kept coming up to me, people I knew, people I didn't know, people would like hit me up on LinkedIn, and they'd say, "Here's how that book helped our program," and I was like, "That's why I wrote this, to be able to help people that I haven't even met yet." And one of the really cool byproducts of Hackable was that I eventually got accepted to give a TED talk. And that was another life goal of mine. Again, also something that's
That's
incredibly
on
hard to
my
do.
life goal list too. So kudos to you, man. Congrats. And that
Well, I
one, if
wrote a
I'm not
blog.
mistaken, is why you need to think like a hacker, correct?
Yeah, that's the name of it. Yeah. I wrote a blog about how, if you're interested in writing a TED talk, how to think about approaching it, like your application, your idea, all that stuff. I can send that to you.
I appreciate
Um,
it.
so I get accepted to this TED talk, and then this funny moment happened where, as I mentioned, Hackable is about like helping this particular subset of the world solve this particular type of problem. And I get accepted to this TED Talk, and one thing that's really cool is they really care about the speakers doing a good job, and so they give you a coach. And so I first meet with this coach, and I explained to her the premise of what Hackable is about, which is what ostensibly I thought I was there to talk about. And I walked through the whole thing, and she's like, "No, that's no, that's not going to work." And I was like, I was confused because I'm like, wait, isn't that what? And she said, no, that's not going to work because a TED Talk needs to help the world, needs to help everybody, needs to help a general audience, can't just be this subset. And I inherently knew that to be true. And so it wasn't much convincing. It didn't take much to convince me to start thinking about it differently. So then we started thinking about, okay, well, what are the universal principles? What's something that anyone can apply? And I started thinking about my own parents. And I was like, my parents were proud of me for writing this book for sure, but they can't do anything with Hackable. It's like, but what could they do something with? And as I started thinking about that, I came to realize that it's the mindset piece. And I was like, the hacker mindset is this absolute superpower. And I think anyone can apply this. And when they do, these wonderful, magical, mysterious, beautiful things happen. Because when you think like a hacker, it does a few things for you. It helps you, first of all, understand your situation differently. So whatever you're trying to do, maybe you're trying to get a raise, get a promotion, start a company, raise capital, start a charity, whatever. It helps you think differently about how people normally approach that. And when you think differently, what that does is just having that different viewpoint, it reveals these overlooked pathways. Like people are blind to a certain assumption. And it's like, well, if that assumption is flawed or wrong, or maybe there's some loophole in it. And that's what makes hackers so successful is they're willing to look at things a little bit differently. And so ultimately, that's what I decided to give that TED talk about was the hacker mindset. And so I gave this TED talk, incredible. Like it's giving me chills even thinking about it right now, like standing in the middle of that red dot and just talking about this idea, achieving a life goal. And it was amazing. And I get off the stage and this funny moment happened where this woman comes up to me who had just watched it. And I had copies of Hackable there. Hackable was not what the talk was about, but it was the book that I had. And she comes up to me, she's almost breathless, and she's like, is this book about that talk? Because I really need to apply this to my life. And I was like, no, this is for, people trying to build better, more secure software. And she kind of had this like crestfallen look on her face. And she paused for a moment. And then she looks me dead in the eyes without irony. She says, well, can you write that book? And I laughed because I don't think she realized how significant of an undertaking it is to write a book. And I was like, maybe someday. And so then I, finished up that trip and went home back to California. And that question stayed with me for some time. And a few months later, I was like, I have to write this book. And so that's what I set out to do with Inner Hacker. And the reason it's called Inner Hacker is I believe that there is a hacker inside all of us. And my goal with this book is to help people unleash their inner hacker. Like it's in you already. Can you let it out? Can you give yourself the permission to think differently? Can you give yourself the permission to be more of an independent thinker, to be more nonconforming, to amplify your curiosity and creativity? Can you be committed enough to see something through that might be a slog and might be difficult? Because I think that will help people accomplish their goals faster or bigger or accomplish goals that they otherwise couldn't accomplish without this new mindset.
Wow, I love it already. Your super synopsis of it is astounding. And again, I would say it's definitely mindset, but I would say it's infringing upon being a philosophy, right? I
Yeah.
love it. So I definitely can't wait. Is there a target date for publishing if you that you can share?
Yes, we will. I don't know the exact date today, like what day of what month, but it will absolutely be in hands for DEF CON coming up this summer. We're gonna
Excellent.
do a whole we'll do a whole big thing there. There's a lot of anniversaries coming up this year. I mean, this is 20 years that our hacking company's been in business. It's 10 years since we've been running IoT Village, which is one of the villages at DEF CON. It's 5-year anniversary of Hackable, and it will be the launch date of this new book. So we're gonna definitely do some
Excellent.
big events, and it'll
So
be
mark
really
your
fun.
calendar, summer. This book is coming. Get your copy pre-ordered
That's right.
now. So Ted, thank you so much for again delivering something to industry that is so sorely needed. And I'm glad she had that conversation with you. I'm glad that stuck with you, and I'm glad you wrote this book. So I can't wait till it comes up. I'm definitely going to be one of the first copies I'm going to definitely have on my desk. You mentioned DEF CON, and we got to talk a little bit about DEF CON. So
Yeah.
anyone that's not watching this right now, if you have not heard of DEF CON yet, get on their page now. It is an event that I implore every professional, even if you're not a cybersecurity professional, there's something for everyone at this event. It'll be eye-opening experience. Now, I believe there's still cash at the door. I believe they have not changed that, correct?
I'm not sure. My team buys the tickets, so I haven't
Oh, okay.
actually
Well, there
handled the
are tickets,
transact,
but I
but I think it's
believe
cash.
if you go to attend, it's cash at the door. They may have changed it. Check their website for more details. But it is the creme de la creme. It is the Super Bowl of hacking, pen testing, auditing,
Yep.
security in general. They have some of the most innovative talks there. They have groundbreaking presentations. I just had some folks from Romania, a couple guys that talk about Amazon AMIs. And I had them earlier this season on the podcast. They had a phenomenal talk they delivered at last year's DEF CON. And again, it is the Super Bowl of hacking.
Yeah.
So anyone watching this, check out DEF CON's page. And if you can go, it's in Vegas every year, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Vegas is always a good time. So I implore everyone to, even if you're not in cybersecurity, just go connect to a community of really great people and learn a lot of great stuff that you're not going to really learn at a lot of other type of events and conventions. But if you could give anyone anything like a little perspective inside the DEF CON, what would that be?
Yeah. I like the way you describe it. It's the hacker Super Bowl. I feel like a lot of hackers might even be like, "Ugh, I don't like that description," because they're so like not. They're like, "I don't want to be referred to as something else. We're our own thing."
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I really love about DEF CON, there's a lot of things I love about it, but one of the things that really strikes me is when you walk down the hallways of DEF CON, you get this sense that this is a very welcoming and inclusive place. And you see that because people are just weird. And I don't mean that in a
That's
disparaging way. I
we're
mean, like,
all weird
we're
in
all
different ways.
weird, but yeah, we're all weird in our own different ways. But when you walk around DEF CON, people feel the freedom to be their weirdest self. And I mean that again in a positive way, not a negative way. People are like, I want to dress this way. I want to behave this way. I want to explore this like nerdy concept that I'm really interested in. And it's just so fascinating. It can be intimidating for first timers. You walk in there and you're like, what is this? This is not like any convention I've ever been to. But there's just so much cool stuff to do and to see, and the experience keeps getting more immersive. There was a whole this year, this whole new section that was I can't remember, I think it was all about AI, but it was like you literally they like you stepped in a thing and it felt like you were taking a train somewhere. You weren't actually moving, but it was like a whatever you'd call that,
Like
like the
augmented
room was
reality
moving.
simulation. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you exit it, you're all of a sudden in this. If you can imagine, like, visualize a cyberpunk from like a movie or an image you've seen, and they created that. So you were like in the cyberpunk world. It was all like neon colors and graffiti, and you were like, "Am I still in the Vegas Convention Center? What happened?" And it's such a cool experience.
Wow. Well, we could talk for hours and hours, and I do want to respect your time, Ted, that you're giving for the podcast today, and thank you. But let's say, a part of this podcast is to kind of share a little bit about yourself as well, because my hope is that if we just had one viewer watching this and they see a bit of you and themselves, that they will be inspired to take the journey and to just to, well, I call it the plunge into security and cybersecurity. And there's so many avenues to get into cybersecurity and so many ways to begin your journey. But for you, let's say we go back to your day one when you made the decision that, hey, I want to do security. That's what I want my career to be. This is what I want to choose my path. What's the story behind your day one?
Yeah, I look at myself as an example that if I can learn it, anyone else can learn it. There's a perception that might even to some extent be true, but there's this perception that if you want to work in security, you have to have been interested in computers your whole life. You have to have a computer science degree, all this kind of stuff, some sort of engineering or mathematical background. And that wasn't exactly my story. I entered security from really the perspective of entrepreneurship. Basically, I had been in a completely unrelated field. I knew I wanted to be in tech. And then through some like really just wonderful opportunities, I actually write about this in my forthcoming book. I was able to become CEO of this water tech company. And I didn't really like that very much, but it put me in this position so that when I met the guy who had who's now my business partner and like very, very, very dear friend, I would be ready. And when we met, he was looking for someone to sort of help him run a security company. I was looking to get into different aspects of tech. And it's like our skills were really complementary. And so we said, let's do this. Let's go team up and do this company. And so for me, day one was like, what is security? I literally was like running a security company, had no idea what I was, other than I knew this was it was meaningful work filled with brilliant people. I mean, I figured that out in the course of course, exploring whether this was something I wanted to do. I was like, I love how smart these people are. I love that this matters in the world. I love that this is meaningful work. But then I had to learn it. And so if I could learn, I mean, at that point, I was probably like, maybe like early or mid 20s. By that point, a lot of people are like, I'm on my career path. This is my path. Like,
Mhm.
and me, I was like, well, I'm going to basically start over. And I think being a novice is really powerful. And so basically what I had to do was I had to learn it. And one of the things that I did in hindsight, this was ridiculous and bold but I don't know, that I'm drawn to stuff like that. And what I said was, I was like, well, maybe a great way to learn this would be to teach it. And so why don't I go give a talk at a conference? That will force me to have to learn some stuff in order to be able to illustrate it from a stage. And so I set out to do that. And it took a little while, but I eventually got accepted to give a talk. And the first talk was like, it wasn't a complete dumpster fire. It wasn't great, but it was like I gave something useful to the audience. My delivery, I'm sure, was horrendous. Um, but it was a starting point. And
Starting point.
fast forward to today, and now it's like I'm the keynote speaker at conferences. And in the process, I learned what these principles are. And I think one of the things that's really served me today in terms of whether it's writing books or appearing on podcasts like yours or giving talks is I still remember what it's like to be a novice. I still remember being in rooms and it feeling like people are speaking another language to each other. And I'm like, I think I can solve that problem. I think I can figure out how to communicate these ideas in ways that no matter how technical or untechnical or non-technical, I don't know what the word would be, a person is, I can help them understand. And including people who like know this and have been living this for decades. Like, how do you communicate to that person the same as you communicate to someone who knows nothing? And so that was my journey, really, was like kind of thrown in the deep end, had to figure it out, took some crazy risks to accelerate my timeline. And honestly, I'd probably recommend that to everyone.
I love it because at some point or another, you just got to go all in. You just got to jump in the pool. You got to jump. And
Yeah.
I love your story there. One of the things I usually advocate to people because they're like, oh, I'm not that technical or I'm not that cyber savvy. I say, look, can you read? Can you comprehend? You could do cyber. And that's all it takes is a lot of reading, a lot of ingesting information, and then eventually developing your own perspectives and your own opinions as well when it comes to certain topics. Um, one of the things I like to do is I know we talked a lot about the technical stuff and we talked a little bit about your journey, but I want to have just what I call my moment of levity, where we just have this a series of rapid fire questions. There's no right or wrong answers, just kind of have a little bit of fun with my
Okay.
guests. So if you're ready, I'm gonna throw some questions at you. Whatever comes to mind, there's no right or wrong answer. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First question: is a hot dog a sandwich?
I don't know.
Okay, that's a valid answer. Cake or pie? This is going to divide a room.
Oh, cake. Yeah.
Cake. What kind of
How's that
cake?
even a question? What
What
kind of
kind of
cake?
cake?
Chocolate with chocolate frosting. Yeah.
Chocolate cake. All right, with frosting. Star Wars or Star Trek? Now, this is going to divide any room, especially DEF CON crowd.
Oh, Star Wars. Yeah. Star
Star
Wars for
Wars.
sure.
He's with the Force. All right, he's
Yeah.
strong with the Force. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what is the last book you've read?
My favorite book, I can't necessarily say one favorite, but the one that comes to mind that might actually answer both of those questions is this book called Die with Zero. And the premise of the book is it advocates for why you should give your money away while you're alive, like bequeath it to your kids or to charities or whatever while you're in your like 40s and 50s rather than waiting until you die, because it's like it talks about why it's a more intentional way to do that, better way to use your money, etc. And the reason I really like it is it's a very non-conforming, independent thinking way to look at personal finance. And I know I'm onto something when I talk about this book, when every person I talk to about it is like, no. It's like, okay, when there's resistance like that, that tells you maybe there's a new pathway there. So
I
I
like
really
that.
dig that
I
book.
like that. Is there any charities, nonprofits, volunteer work that either yourself do or you support, whether with your time, energy, or money, or just any that you just want to shine a light on, and that may be something near and dear to you that you would like to shine a light on?
Yeah, definitely. So mental health is obviously an important topic in our community. And I've been fortunate to be involved with a group called the Samaritans, which I think they have chapters all over the place. But the one in particular I've been involved with is on Cape Cod, which is where my parents live, and it's all about suicide prevention. And so I've really been drawn to, like, you know, we've all had dark days, right? We've all had
Yes.
days where it's like we're sad. And imagine, the way I think about it is I'm not suicidal, but if I think about the saddest that I've ever been, and then it's like that every single day, every waking moment, like you start to conceptualize why someone would be suicidal. And it's like there's a better way out. And so last summer I raised a whole bunch of money to run a road race, the Falmouth Road Race, which is a pretty elite road race in the Boston or on Cape Cod, for this great organization. My dad's involved with the organization, which is how I got involved. And it's just yeah, I think mental health is a really, really important topic. And I see a lot of people in the hacker community also advocating for these things. So Cape Samaritans would be right up there.
Wonderful. And if you could please provide me a link to their page and their social media, I'd gladly put it in the description below. Um,
Sure.
Someone that might be watching right now is thinking to themselves, okay, I like this guy's journey. I want to learn more about how to be an ethical hacker or how just to be a hacker. Let's just get rid of the term ethical. Just how can I start to become a hacker? Do I start with
Yeah.
my toaster and taking it apart, reassembling it? Where do I begin? Is there any good resources, websites, forums, or even subreddits that you could recommend for your Redditors out there that you
Yeah.
would recommend for people just to get connected to and or just sign up on and start reading and learning and connecting?
Yeah. This is going to sound like a shameless plug for myself, but honestly, Inner Hacker, I think will literally do that, because what it does in the book is it talks. I mean, I go deep into the hacker mindset. Like, how do they think about curiosity? How can you be more curious? How do you get information? All that kind of stuff. So I would definitely recommend that when that comes out. If people want it before it comes out, I could probably even share a pre-release version of elements of it. Getting involved with DEF CON would be another thing that I would recommend. And go in with that sort of just like, go in with the open mind and be curious, because you walk in and it's like, what's happening in this room? Literally ask that. I mean, I do that, and I've been going for like 12 or 13 years. I go in every room. What are you guys doing in here? and someone's going to explain it. And then you can sit down. There's a lot of hands-on stuff. So I would definitely recommend that. And then wherever DEF CON might be unattainable for people who maybe can't travel to the United States, or if they can, they can't travel to Vegas. There's probably a B-Sides or some other local
Yes.
security meetup in your area. Just go to that and just start asking questions. Just ask endless questions about what you're interested in, and that will lead you to some other piece of information where you're like, well, in this answer, there's now another question I have. And that's how you get to the bottom of things.
Okay. Well, we're soon to wrap up here, but I always love to give my guests the final word. So, in regards to the, hacking, in regards to any other topics that's current, like AI, quantum, and all the things that we're going to be facing in the near future, what are your final thoughts and words on where we are and where we're heading?
The way that I would suggest people think about emerging tech, AI, quantum, fill in the blank, whatever is going to be next 5 years from now, is that emerging tech changes some things and doesn't change other things at all. And we often get wrapped up in this hype cycle of like, AI is going to change everything. And so for some reason, we abandon the principles by which secure systems are built. And that's ludicrous. So what we need to do is we need to realize emerging tech, whatever it is, those principles are going to be the same. They've been the same today as they were for all the other previous introductions, whether that was Internet of Things or bring your own device or cloud computing or whatever. So we need to realize principles are universal, and then how those principles are applied, that's the part that changes. But we can't just automatically assume the security problems have gone away because AI or quantum exists. We also can't think the opposite, that like because this exists, everything is now insecure. We need to realize that it's the principles are universal. We adhere to those principles and then focus on how the application changes.
Wonderful. Well, here you are, folks. Best-selling author Ted Harrington. He's got Inner Hacker coming out soon. All the links of everything we discussed will be in the description below, including links to his books. Pre-order, get both of his books. Get the one book that's available now, and get on the pre-order list for the new one, because it's going to be, again, so insightful. It's to me, I consider it a own philosophy. I love the mindset behind it. Again, Ted, thank you for existing. Thank you for doing what you've done in industry, and you continue to do in industry. Wish we had a million more like you, Ted. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you for having me. And anyone who's listening, if you want to find out more about those books or get in touch with me or learn more about pen testing, just go to tedharrington.com and everything you could need is right there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ted.
All right. Thank you.